Hey guys, and welcome to the first episode of Superhero Science, where we explore superheroes and their super awesome real-life counterparts. Today, we're going to look at a superhero who really knows how to bring the heat: the Human Torch. The Human Torch, or Johnny Storm, is part of the original Fantastic Four in the Marvel Universe. He can control fire and ambient heat energy, as well as cover his body in a fiery plasma. He can shoot fiery projections that reach over 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the melting point of iron. Pretty hot stuff, huh? So who better to help us understand the science behind the heat than someone who deals with fire on a regular basis? A firefighter. This is Josh, who, besides being my super goofy brother, is a lieutenant for Manor Fire Department and somewhat of a superhero fan. So, I decided to go down and visit him and his fellow firefighters to see if they could help me out with some superhero science. Okay, so, hey guys, this is Josh, Ray, and Morgan from ESD 12 Manor Fire Department. They so graciously gave up a few hours of their Saturday to help me understand some of the science behind the Human Torch. Somewhat of avid superheroes fans themselves, so they're going to help us.
Experts, probably.
Experts, as they say. They're going to help us answer some questions. So, let's get to it. My first question is, what is fire?
It's a chemical reaction. It is a chemical reaction.
We're off to a great start, nice. Aren't we? Well, what is fire is actually a pretty complicated question. But they're right. Fire is a chemical reaction. It releases heat and light, and it happens in a mixture of gases. It's basically our sensory experience of a chemical reaction called combustion. Okay, so in the comic books, they're so great. Johnny, the Human Torch, turns his flame, or his flame can range from red to yellow to orange. What does the color of like a fire or flame mean in regards to like firefighters? What does that tell you?
The actual color can, I think, it determines what's actually being burned.
Okay.
So sometimes, like when you see your oven, or not your oven, the stovetop, sometimes it's like blue fire,
okay,
natural gas. Sometimes when things are burning, you'll see the fire turn green. It just determines what's actually being burned.
Nice.
And it can determine like how hot it is. Like a white or blue flame is like the hottest, and then red's the coolest, and orange and yellow. Yellow's like your basic like medium warm.
Okay,
fire.
Cool. So you would say like the Human Torch is like, if he's red and yellow and orange,
it's
mainly
probably like 400 degrees for heat.
Okay. So one of his superpowers is that not only can he start fire, but he can control it. Are there any times when firefighters have to start fires and control them themselves?
Yeah, a lot of the time, mainly for wildland or grass fires, they call it back burning. So you burn all the material ahead of time before your uncontrolled fire gets to that area, so it stops it right in its place.
Yes. And sometimes if a structure is too dangerous to go inside, we just have to watch a fire and make sure that it isn't spread.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
I've heard like a term like called control burning, where like, I don't know if it's like firefighters or if it's like part of the parks and safety that start fires to like help remove debris and stuff. Do you guys do that as well, or is that mainly like the parks?
We're pretty much notified of it.
Oh, okay.
Usually, I believe they have their own like suppression systems on scene whenever they're doing that. But we're notified just in case if something does get out of hand.
Oh, okay.
So
or if someone calls it in and they don't know that someone's burning there.
Yeah. Other departments do control burns for like Bastrop. They do them now because if they don't burn all that stuff that's on the ground, all that foliage, all that dead stuff, if they don't burn it over time, it just builds up, and then when like the stuff hits the fan, then like the fire comes out of control, and there's just like all that stuff that's burning, so it's harder to put out. So whereas you burn it like once a year, and then it's easier to control.
Nice.
So if you don't do that, then it gets out of control.
Right. I'm glad I prepped you well. Nice. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Controlled burning, also known as prescribed burning, involves setting planned fires to maintain the health of a forest. These burns are scheduled for a time when the fire will not pose a threat to the public or to the fire managers. Controlled burns are lit for a number of reasons. By ridding a forest of dead leaves, tree limbs, and other debris, a prescribed burn can help prevent a destructive wildfire. Controlled burns can also reduce insect populations and destroy invasive species. In addition, fire can be rejuvenating. It returns nutrients to the soil and the ashes of vegetation that could otherwise take years to decompose. And after a fire, the additional sunlight and open space in a forest can help young trees and other plants start to grow. Some plants, such as a certain pine species, requires fire before the cones or fruits containing the seeds can release them. These cones or fruits need fire to melt a resin that holds the seeds inside. As a result, without fire, these species couldn't reproduce. Okay, so another one of Johnny Storm's superpowers is his ability to cool objects to about 30 degrees Fahrenheit, which is below the freezing point of water, and heat them to several hundred degrees. This is kind of more of a comic book question, but you can also apply your firefighter knowledge. Why do you think it would be useful for him to heat and cool things?
In Fantastic Four 2. That's the way they defeat Dr. Doom. No, they heat him up really hot and then they cool him down and it literally freezes him in place. And then they put him in a box and I think they take him to special jail so he can't get out.
Yeah, they put him underwater. I think it was the first one.
Yeah. You're not expecting that, huh?
They know their stuff. Okay, so as firefighters, do you ever see a time where matter being heated affects your ability to do your job, or see matter changing if it's heated or cooled in any way?
I actually haven't seen this, but I've heard sometimes during car fires it can get so hot that the actual asphalt starts melting. And sometimes your boots can you'll feel the ground kind of.
Oh whoa. Oh yeah. So that would be probably just from a science perspective, when matter metals are heated, they expand. So I wonder if that has anything to do with the
expansion. It would have to get really hot, but yeah, it can shift some architectural stuff.
Yeah, or glass in a building, because if it's an oxygen fueled fire and then the glass gets hot and breaks and just gives it all off. Or sorry, a fuel fueled fire and then the glass breaks, then it has all the oxygen it needs. And it won't die out. Oh, because it's,
Yeah. And then a lot of the times in the big warehouses, they have those beams, those metal beams that run across the ceiling. And that usually will expand depending on how long it's been directly affected from the heat. And so then after it's all said and done, our fire marshal or fire inspector can go in, and that's usually they can determine where the fire originated from just based off of that section being expanded versus the other section where it's going.
Cool. Very cool. Okay. So another little facts that I had to look up. According to Encyclopedia Britannica, they have a section on the torch. The torch is unaffected by electricity. But how does electricity play a role in firefighter world in regards to either starting a fire or putting out a fire, or if there's any concerns when electricity is?
Well, if there's an active current going on when something's on fire, we mess with water and electricity don't mix well, so that will be a harm to us.
Right.
So you gotta make sure that the power's cut and then you can deal with the fire.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Or down power lines. We just kind of have to watch and make sure everything's okay, because that's not our job expertise to fix electricity.
Right.
So, but if there's wires on the ground, we're taught forever in a area where it's electric, you have to bunny hop together with your feet together.
Bunny hop together?
Yeah, so your feet touch at the same time.
Oh, why? Because you would otherwise
Because if you were to step off the engine, holding on to the metal and touch connects the current.
Ooh, so then
executed.
Yeah. So you'll learn this later if you don't, but you are conductive and you do not want that traveling through you. Not fun.
And then a lot of the times that's how our house fires start, is because faulty electricity or people plugging in too many things in the outlet and it's not rated for that. And then like electricity for like lightning strikes are big causes
So
of
how,
house fires and grass fires.
How would you know when you're plugging in too much stuff? Like if you were gonna give like a tips for families back home.
So usually like it's power outlets. I don't know. You can like look it up on your I don't know, your house manual. Yeah, your homeowner.
Okay.
But yeah, you usually like don't want to plug in two. What are those things called?
Oh, like the surge protectors.
Surge protectors, like two of them. You don't want to plug in like another surge protector and another one. You don't want to plug in more than what's allowed.
Okay, nice. Or I don't know. That's a good answer. Okay. I have often heard that like when you're trying to check to see if there's like a fire on the other side of the door, you like touch the handle. And you said touch the handle like that.
Touch the back.
Yeah, to like make sure that there's, or like to see if there's a fire. Why would you have to touch the handle to see if there's like a fire on the other side of the door?
Because heat can radiate and it'll like warm up things that's nearby. So it's a good way to touch it to know if something's back there. The worst thing you do is to open it up. If you keep the door closed, that will it will lessen the ability of the fire to move throughout the structure. So
because it has to go through the door, and the door is very sturdy most of the time in most houses. So like you can tell if doors are shut, like in house fires, like they'll only have like a little bit of smoke damage compared to like the fire room, and like the whole door will be burnt and it will be fine outside.
And then, because if you touch the door handle, those door handles from one side to the door to the other are all connected, and so like you'll be able to feel that heat from the metal or the bronze, whatever it is. You'll be able to feel it radiate through or conduct through, and you can feel that what's on the other side.
Conduction is the movement of heat or electricity through direct contact. Think roasting a marshmallow on a coat hanger and the heat rising from the fire to your hand, or touching the metal handle on a pot after it's been sitting on the stove for a while. It feels really warm, right? That's conduction. Okay, convection in simple terms is the movement of heat through a liquid or gas. Think how hot air rises, cools, and then falls. Like in a hot air balloon, the hot air is what makes the air balloon rise. I wonder if this could be how the Human Torch flies. Radiation is a transfer of energy through waves. It doesn't need a substance to travel from one place to another like conduction and convection do. An example would be the energy we get from the sun, or microwave. Speaking of radiation, here's a little fun fact. Did you know that there are several superheroes that got their powers from radiation? So, to get things a little complicated, radiation is a method by which atoms lose energy from the nucleus. So, to be radioactive, the object is putting off ionizing radiation. Literally, every living thing is radioactive, and we give off a little dose of radiation. In the real world, too much radiation can be a bad thing. You can get sunburn, radiation sickness, and even get cancer. But in the comic book world, that's a different story. This is where a lot of superheroes get their powers. For example, Superman got his powers from solar radiation, and the Incredible Hulk, gamma rays. Spider-Man got bit by a radioactive spider, and of course the Fantastic Four, cosmic radiation. So in the comic books, the Torch has a layer of microscopic transparent plates on his entire body that are fireproof. These plates are regenerated daily because they get damaged or destroyed by the plasma that his cells generate via nuclear fusion. Very fancy. If he does not have enough protective plates, he could theoretically burn himself up. In real life, how is the fire suit designed to protect the firefighter from fire?
well, the suit is designed with multiple layers.
Yeah, so our turnout gear is made of
Nomex.
3 layers.
Yeah, it's made of Nomex, which is a fire-resistant material, or Kevlar. Yeah. So it has 3 layers.
And then there's the moisture barrier, and then the inner liner.
Yeah.
The moisture barrier keeps you keeps like moisture from getting in and also from coming out. So when you're sweating, just to make sure supposed to help with like steam and stuff like that, so you don't get too much moisture in, and if it's hot, you'll start steaming, and so it's supposed to prevent steam burns.
And the suits aren't fireproof; they're fire resistant.
Oh.
So there is a breaking point. If it gets too hot, then the suit will fail.
Yeah, and the weakest point of our gear is our face piece. I think it fails at 400 degrees of direct heat.
So no blue or white fire.
No, no fun.
Okay, so can you explain the difference between fireproof and fire resistance?
Fireproof is just like, I think it's just more like the direct heat, it can like withstand longer, where our fire resistant is like, can withstand heat, but not really direct heat. So like you can stick your hand, I guess the best way to do it is you can stick your arm over like a flame, a fire, like really quickly. That's like fire resistant, you won't be able to feel it. But like if you stick it over there and you hang it over for a long time, then it'll eventually burn. Whereas fireproof, you could just leave it over there and it wouldn't really.
Fine. Okay, nice. Okay. Was that you guys?
No,
Oh, okay.
We're good.
Go. Okay. Insulation is a material that is used to stop the passage of electricity, heat, or sound from one conductor to another. Are there examples of this that you guys like have to deal with? Examples of insulation that you guys have to deal with? Any?
I just mainly thought of the insulation in our suits. You're talking about like.
Or it could be like suits, or just like.
In houses.
Yeah, maybe like in houses.
There can be like a little bit of fire in the insulation, so you have to pull it all out to make sure that there's none still like in the attic or anything.
Because like in houses, there's that little gap like where they have wiring and all that stuff. If fire gets in there, it can just spread throughout the
It
entire
can take
house.
hours to even show that there's fire.
Because the insulation's stopping it from showing.
And then like our suits, the insulation, it's not supposed to like let too much heat in, but it also doesn't let heat out. So like afterwards, you get like really overheated when you're in your fire gear.
Yeah. I wonder how hot it gets in there.
Pretty hot. Like on I've even seen it on like summer days when you take it off, your head will be steaming.
Whoa.
Stuff like that.
It kind of feels like, when you preheat your oven, that's like 350.
Yeah.
You open it up, you can feel
That's
it.
what it feels like.
Like sometimes when you go in a house, it's way hotter than 350.
Ooh. That sounds like a fun science experiment. Anyways, okay, let's talk weaknesses. In the Marvel Universe, the Human Torch's ability to ignite himself is limited by the quantity of oxygen in his environment. And you kind of already mentioned this a little bit, but how does oxygen play a role in like fire? And is it the same for a chemical fire? I don't know why I asked that question, but how does oxygen play a role in fire?
So fire is a chemical reaction. There's 3 components. It's oxygen, you need fuel, and you need heat. You take one of those components out of the equation, the fire will cease to burn.
Yeah.
So in our case, when we use water, we're stifling the heat portion, where there's different ways you can put out a fire. You can remove the fuel and put it out. You can remove the oxygen. You can literally cover up, like if there's a fire in a room, you can close the door, block all the ways that air would get in, and the fire will just eventually go out.
And we use foam, and that's how it also removes the oxygen.
Oh, so the foam
It's like a blanket over it.
Oh. So without oxygen, you would have no fire. Nice. All this talk about putting out fires reminds me of another superhero. Or should I say, supervillain. Hydra Man is a Marvel supervillain who is usually shown as the enemy of Spider-Man. He has the ability to transform himself into a watery liquid substance, can get into small places, and then reform himself, kind of like a sea cucumber. He can also merge his body with water and can control it. Controlling water is a pretty cool superpower, which makes me wonder. So basically, he can control water.
It's a water bender.
Yeah, so controlling water is a pretty cool superpower, which makes me wonder, how do firefighters do it? How do you guys control water and like the equipment that goes with that?
We usually control it with our fire hose and a fire nozzle. So the firefighter, which is both these firefighters, they have this nozzle that's and hose that's like 1.5 inches, 1 3/4. And they use that to be able to like control water, so they can open the nozzle and close it at their will. And then one of the drivers has that our fire engines has 1,000 gallons of water, so they pull levers, and whatever lever they pull allows the water to go through the hose, and then from there, once there's water in the hose, these guys can open it up and let the water
We can
shoot
use
out.
hydrants too.
So when would you use a hydrant versus when would you use the fire engine?
If it's gonna be like a long scene, like if it's just like a very small fire, like not a house fire, but like a small fire.
Car fire.
Yeah, a car fire. You wouldn't use all 1,000 gallons. You would maybe at most use half a tank, so 500 gallons. But if you're gonna be on a house fire, you want to make sure you have a water supply, because 1,000 gallons only lasts 5 to 8 minutes if they're continuously flowing. So you want to make sure that you have a hydrant established, because it's not going to last long.
Okay. Well, your final question is probably the most important one. In a battle between Hydro Man and the Human Torch, who would win?
What would you say?
Yeah, you can all answer independently.
I think Hydro Man would win. Yeah, for sure, because
I would
take away his heat.
I would say it's very evenly matched, because like you could say one thing and then the other person could say something else. You know, it's like, well, Hydro Man can beat Human Torch. He just has more water to put him out. But then you can also say, well, the Human Torch could just heat himself so high that the water becomes steam and goes away. So I don't know. It's just one of those weird situations where. Okay, go ahead.
He could bring the temperature down on Hydro Man.
Oh, and
Yeah,
freeze them.
Yeah.
Or put Hydro Man bringing a rocket up into space with no oxygen instead.
Yeah.
That's true.
So
I don't know.
Yeah.
So I would say the Human Torch. One, because he is obviously the superhero, and he's part of the Fantastic Four, so he works as a team. And so any weakness that Hydro Man could come out with, his other 3 members could come and help him out in that situation.
But the question wasn't targeted for the Fantastic Four. It was literally Human Torch.
Human Torch versus Hydro Man. So.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that's
Yeah.
like what I was saying. Someone could, you know.
I would say Human Torch, because he's good. He's a good guy.
He's a
And,
good guy.
If I had to pick one, I'd say Human Torch. 'Cause yeah, he's a good guy.
Oh, alright, well 2-1. There you have it. Alrighty. Thanks you guys. Y'all are awesome. A round of applause. I definitely hope that got on there. Yay! Well, there you have it. The science behind the Fantastic Four's Human Torch. I hope you learned something from these super cool firefighters. And until next time, keep sciencing. It's recording, but we can, all this can be edited out.
Most of it, hopefully, will be edited.
Yeah, basically. So, did you research some of this stuff?
No, probably should have.
We just put it on the spot.
It's
Just
all
found
in
out
here.
out
Yeah.
loud,
Do you
like
need
2 hours
to do
ago.
anything?
No, it's like recording right now, so it's
Oh.
fine. Yeah.
Okay.
You can give him some answers if he doesn't know. Okay. Inside the fire engine. Are you what's your job? You work at the fire engine. What do you do in the fire engine?
I see the fire.
Yeah, you see the fire engine. Yeah, this is the driver's seat back up there. Nice.
This is where Morgan sits.
What does she do?
Just sits here.
He's like, this is above my pay grade. I don't know. I'm not responsible for that knowledge. That's the conduction. Awesome. Okay. I told him that word earlier. I was like, here you go. No, I'm sure you knew that
I
word
knew
before.
that word
Okay.
existed.
Nice. I knew that word existed.
What it meant.
Okay. Hydro Man is a Marvel supervillain who's usually always shown as the enemy of Spider-Man. He has the ability to transform himself into a watery liquid substance. And like bye. Whoa.